All right, hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar. Depending on where you're from, maybe good afternoon, good evening, good morning, et cetera, et cetera. Before I hand it over to Aneta and Adina, I just wanted to go over some of the technology. Right now you can see the screen, you can hear me, that's great. You guys are automatically muted. In order to interact with Adina and Aneta, you'll need to use the questions tab in your webinar dashboard. Feel free to ask questions about either the content or any kind of technical issue you might be experiencing at any point. Adina will address those as she is able to during the webinar, and then after the main presentation, she will take anything that's left over, but no limit on when or how many questions you can ask. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Aneta.
Aneta Stroud, and Associate Director for Content and Curriculum with ACRO, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar presentation on Cambridge A and AS qualifications within the U.S. context. Before we get started, just to reiterate quickly that if you do have questions during the webinar, please feel free to go ahead and type them within your chat dashboard, and we will go ahead and address them either during the presentation or during the Q&A when Adina is completed with the presentation. So today's webinar, Cambridge AS and A levels in the U.S. context, what you need to know, will address the growing need for U.S. admissions officers and policymakers to become familiar with the Cambridge International qualifications that many of our U.S. domestic students are taking. Many institutions have published policies regarding transfer and advanced standing credit for AP and IB courses, but many don't have a policy for A and AS level examinations. Having a clear public policy can help aid in the student's decision to attend an institution. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Adina Chapman, Recognition Manager North America West with Cambridge Assessment International Education, who will give us the Cambridge International update on Cambridge programming being delivered here in the United States. Welcome, Adina.
Thank you so much, Aneta. And thank you all for taking the time out of your busy days to learn more about Cambridge AS and A levels in the US context. And the goal of this webinar is to really introduce you to how our qualifications, the traditional British qualifications, are being offered in US high schools across the United States. And there's, please feel free, as Aneta said, to ask me questions as you go, and I will try to address them. I wanted to start off with familiarizing you all with our name change. And one thing you'll notice is that we used to be called Cambridge International Examinations. And we have recently, in the last 2 years, been rebranded as Cambridge Assessment International Education. And that branding will appear throughout the presentation. It's been changed on all of our logos, and that has been changed on all of our transcripts. And so I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we were the same organization. We are actually a department within the Division of Cambridge Assessment at the University of Cambridge. It's a 160-year-old division that has offered curriculum for 5 to 19-year-olds across the world. And as a part of the University of Cambridge, our goal and our mission is to prepare school students. In 110,000 schools in almost 70 countries around the world. In the US, we have recently invested to have staff here in the US to build the curriculum and the number of schools offering our curriculum. Many of you may be familiar with us from an international standpoint, where you recruit and admit a lot of our international students. It's the same curriculum whether it's offered around the world or in the US context. One of the goals of this webinar today is to really tell you how to interpret the terminology that is British. If you're unfamiliar with some of the British terminology, it's sort of like George Bernard Shaw said, the US and Great Britain are two countries separated by a common language. So I'm going to be explaining things and transferring them more into the American higher education context. An example of our growth in the United States is that in 2012, 2013, we had 55,000 examinations being taken for A and AS levels in the US. Within 5 years, we've more than doubled that. And our predicted growth by 22-23 is 216,000 A and AS levels offered in the US. So we're anticipating a very large growth domestically, as well as we are the #1 destination country for all Cambridge International students around the globe. So I think you will see increasing demands on both sides of the house. Just to familiarize you all with our Cambridge pathway, that is our curriculum for 5 to 19-year-olds. And some of our schools in the US offer the entire curriculum, but many of them don't. And I'm going to delve into some of the examples of how the curriculum, our curriculum, may appear and what our exams may look like on the transcripts that students bring to your institution. I'm focusing primarily on the advanced level curriculum, which is for the 16 to 19-year-olds, and that's the A and the AS level exams. This is a chart I put together to show why there are some differences between the United States and the United Kingdom and how that impacts your job as an admissions counselor or a registrar. And as you can see here in the United States, when we get to the higher levels of learning in high school, the British educate through the age of 19. And then they have 3 years of college where the student focuses specifically on their discipline. In the US, we have a liberal education or a general education curriculum, which is the lower division, those first 2 years of college before a student has to declare a major in order to complete a 4-year degree. So you can see here that there is some overlap between the Cambridge pathway, which educates through the advanced levels, through an A level, is traditionally taken by someone when they're 19 years old, whereas that would be their freshman year in college in the US. So that's where we're talking about credit and placement issues for students. The IGCSE is the International General Certificate of Secondary Education, and it is unique to Cambridge International. We are the only exam board that offers this. And as you can see here, and you're probably familiar by looking at a lot of different types of high school transcripts, some of our competitors will use our IGCSE, which is our 9th and 10th grade coursework, to get their students prepared to take the IB diploma, for example, or the Cambridge A levels if it's an international student. Or in Florida, the ACE Diploma, which is a combination of A and AS levels that the student would take in grades 11 and 12. Another combination that's extremely common in the US is a lot of the schools that are using Cambridge curriculum are also offering AP courses. So you'll see all kinds of combinations with our courses integrated. And I do want to point out the circle at the bottom that says IGCSE. Underneath it, it says O levels. O levels is the same, it's different terminology, but it's the same exact thing as the IGCSE. So the O levels is a terminology from the past that Great Britain and Singapore have chosen to keep. So if you're dealing with international students, you may occasionally see an O level come in. Just remember that it's an IGCSE. And if you're dealing only with domestic students, you don't have to worry about it. We do not offer those in the United States. I'm going to break down what our Cambridge International A and AS levels are, because being an American myself, working in credit and placement and credit for prior learning for the last 20 years, I was not familiar with this terminology. So it is very rigorous curriculum. Similar to many of our competitors, we offer 55 or more subjects in disciplines specifically. We have an international outlook with a local relevance. So what that means is, while we are international in scope, and if a student takes an AS course or an A-level course in any discipline around the world, it has exactly the same competencies and student learning outcomes as if it's offered from, I say, Arizona or in Zimbabwe. It's exactly the same competencies, student learning outcomes, and thus we would expect it to be treated exactly the same, regardless of where it's taught. However, there is some flexibility for local school boards and states to adopt our curriculum and give it local relevance. For example, the ACE Diploma is something that has grown out of Florida, and it's packaged a combination, and I'll get into that, of A and AS levels that the state of Florida recognizes. So Florida developed this ACE Diploma. It is recognized at the state level, and students are awarded a scholarship if they successfully complete that diploma. So that's why you may see some different terminology there. And that's an example of a local context. And the students also develop a lot of the key skills that don't necessarily have to do with the discipline. It's more about critical thinking, writing. An important, very important distinction between an AS level and an A level is the number of contact hours a student would have in the classroom. And when you're determining what type of credit, college level credit to award, this is something you'll want to know. That an AS level is 180 contact hours, very similar to the same amount of contact hours as an AP course. And it's offered throughout one full year of high school. The A level is 360 contact hours. It is offered throughout 2 full years of high school, similar to the IB higher level in the number of contact hours. And I mentioned this earlier, but these are just different ways that schools in the United States are packaging their A and AS levels. And the first option is many high schools in the US, they will be having the students take IGCSE in their freshman and sophomore year, and occasionally junior year. Then the students will be taking their AS levels junior, maybe senior year. What that means is a lot of US students do not have the opportunity to take a full A level, which is 2 years in depth in a specific subject. So I'd really like to focus on ensuring that if you have any questions about the AS level, that I get those addressed on this webinar, because we want to make sure that students are being awarded appropriate college credit for those. The second combination you'll see in the US is some scheduling at high schools allows a teacher to teach both the AS and the A level, which coupled together would be 2 years in total. And then option 3 is typically what you would see from an international student who comes in with an A level. And the distinction here is they don't stop after the first year and take the AS level exam. Say in England, they just go straight through and complete the entire A level before they sit for the exam. Here's a breakdown of a lot of the courses that we offer in the 4 general fields of math and science, languages, arts, humanities, and interdisciplinary. This is, Annetta will make this PowerPoint available to everyone as a reference, because I'm sure this is something that you'll want to look back at. I just want to point out real quickly that if on this chart, if it says AS in parentheses or A level only, that means that it's only offered at that level. Everything else is offered at both levels. We have a unique program called the Cambridge Global Perspectives. It's a course that is skills-based, integrated. It's about critical thinking and problem solving, doing intensive research and writing, and it involves reflection, communication, and collaboration. And the Cambridge Global Perspectives course is not discipline specific. And so the reason why I wanted to point this out to you is that it may be challenging to figure out how to give credit for this particular course because it is integrated, and typically the teacher would work with the student to choose a topic. It could be, for example, I've seen topics where a biologist does an experiment and then publishes the findings using their research and writing skills. So it's very project-based. And we do have several universities that do recognize this. And if you have any questions about how to grant appropriate credit for that, I'd be happy to talk to you about it and give you some examples of what other institutions have done. So to give you an idea of what is the most popular level of examination that we offer in the US, it is definitely the AS level. So this chart will show you that we are at the top for AS levels, and we're number 5 in the world for offering the full A level, for the reasons I explained before, because we educate through the 12 years and the British educate through 13 years. So it makes sense that we would offer more A levels in the US context. However, this chart might be helpful if you're doing international admissions and you're interested in where our exams are offered throughout the world. So our most popular subjects studied in the United States are listed here, and I will point out that they are, many of them comprise an ACE Diploma that is awarded in Florida. So the majority of our schools, over 300 of them, are in Florida. However, we are growing rapidly. As I pointed out, we have 31 schools in Arizona, and we have several schools in Washington State. We just had 2 schools sign up in California, and we have several more. Almost every state in the South has at least one of our schools. So while we are still definitely in a growth stage, our projections look very positive going forward. That being said, I think we'll find that the top 10 subjects changes as we get more states involved in what the requirements will be for their students. Now, even though this is, you may not deal with curriculum yourselves as admissions and registrars, I know that you'll at some point need to send that curriculum out to faculty to get their review so that they can make the credit determinations that are appropriate. So here is a link to our website where we have, you can sign up for any updates on changes to curriculum. And that happens generally in the fall each year. We also are developing a faculty toolkit. So if you're interested in getting an email faculty toolkit where we've Americanized all the language for faculty, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to send that to you. And just so that you know, if anyone asks, our syllabi are developed in conjunction with higher education faculty all over the world, including the US. So we have staff that develop the curriculum in Cambridge, England, actually come over and visit. We take them to universities across the US, and as they're revising the curriculum, they sit down with faculty in discipline-specific departments and ask them for feedback on you know, is this preparing students to go into your college level courses? Is there any additional information that you need? As I said before, the US is the top destination for Cambridge students worldwide. So not just internally do we have the demand, but internationally, the US is known as the leader for higher education. So it's a really exciting time to be a part of Cambridge International. And currently, we have over 180 institutions, colleges and universities in the US that recognize our 9th and 10th grade IGCSE course. I expect that to be growing as we have more and more of those programs offered in the US. We also have over 650 colleges and universities that do already recognize our qualifications at one level or another. Particularly all of the Ivy Leagues do, because they have traditionally seen a lot of the international students come in with A levels. However, I think as we get more and more domestic students, we are definitely going to be growing the volume of recognition statements. And that's something that I would love to work with any of you on, sending you best practices for policies to bring us on par with AP and IB policies that you have in admissions or credit for prior learning at your institution. So this is the grading system. One of the key features that I'd like you to take away today on this webinar is about our grading system. Cambridge grading scale is a little bit different than the American scale. And we, as you can see, we have an A star, which is outstanding. They're extremely hard to get, very, rare to see those. And if a student has those, they're probably getting an international award for that. So the scale goes all the way down to an E. And I want to point this out, that a British grade of E is actually satisfactory. That is something that in the US context, we're all raised to believe, a C is a passing acceptable score for credit and into a higher education institution. And I just want to share with you a little bit more information on the comparison between the US grading system and the English, the British grading system. So if you look at this chart here, you'll see that the US grade of C is equivalent to an AS level or an A level of E. Please note that the AS levels are always designated with a lowercase letter, and the A levels are always designated with a higher case letter. And then IGCSE is also on a similar grading scale, just so that you're familiar with it. So the true meaning of the letter grade is a standard achieve. It's about measuring a student's proficiency on well-defined course objectives. As you can see here, there's anything below that is below an E is just not considered passing or applicable. So this chart, I further have gone ahead and mapped the US grading scale to the AS level and the A level grading scale, and then also map that to AP, because many of you are already very familiar with AP, as I was. And AP, of course, has the scoring from 1 to 5. And the College Board has a comparability study on their website of AP exam scores associated with a college course. And there's more information on that on the link below. And that will show you how they've correlated a US grade of C to a College Board score or an AP score of 3. And then I've mapped it over to the A and AS levels simply as a guide and a reference point when you're making decisions about what type of whether you should give credit for a British grade of E. So our recommended credit for our examinations are as follows. At the AS level, like I said before, it's 180 contact hours, which is approximately 1 academic year in high school, very similar to AP's 1 academic year. So our recommendation is for humanities and any of the other general education courses at your university that do not require a lab, we recommend 3 credit hours. For any of the courses like the sciences with a lab, then we would recommend an additional credit hour. It's double that for the A level. Our recommendation is because it is 360 contact hours for the A level, as you can see there below. And I've cited some more different articles that also make this recommendation. ACRO, we had a journal article quite a while ago that made this recommendation based on our students' work in Florida, but also WES, the International Credit Evaluator, has also made the same recommendation. So I mentioned earlier our Cambridge International ACE Diploma, and I want to point this out because the state of Florida, a lot of the high schools in Florida will actually put the word, the acronym ACE on the diploma. And I want to clarify that ACE is a diploma, not an actual course in and of itself. The ACE diploma is comprised of A and AS level courses. So when you see the word ACE, you'll have to unpack it to see which courses are at the AS level and the A level. It is similar to some of our competitors who have diploma programs as well, same kind of concept. It's our particular diploma program always includes an AS level global perspectives and research course, which is that one that's skills based, that's about critical thinking, not necessarily discipline specific, but it brings together an interdisciplinary project that includes extensive writing and research. Then the diploma also includes at least 1 credit in math and sciences, at least 1 credit in the languages, in the arts and humanities, and an interdisciplinary and skill-based subjects. They have additional ones, and that's why we see so much of our students taking a lot of the interdisciplinary and skills-based subjects in the US at this point. They're getting familiar with Cambridge curriculum, and then they're building towards more discipline-specific courses. So as an admissions and registrar, you probably want to know a little bit about our reporting process, because this is what would show up at your desk that you would need to know, well, what is a statement of results? Having worked in US higher education for almost 2 decades, I didn't know until a couple of years ago when I took this job that the British always send a preliminary statement of results with their exams. And the purpose of this is it, one, lets you know ahead of time how a student is performing. It also gives a window of opportunity for the student to be able to say, I don't agree with the mark that I was given. So a mark, for example, or a score or a grade, if they don't believe that that's accurate, then they have that window to protest that grade. It rarely gets changed, so just be assured that probably what you're seeing is correct. And if you need to make a decision about credit based on this, there are some additional tools that we have that can help you be assured that you've got the correct information and you're making the right decision. So as you can see here, you've got the watermark, the serial number, the upper and the lowercase letters indicating whether it's an AS level or an A level. And you don't need to pay any attention to the percentage uniform mark. It's really a British, the way that they've arrived at that has to do with the British system of higher education. So don't worry about what that means. It's not relevant in the US context. But at this point, we haven't got them to take it off. We're in the process of asking them to develop transcripts for US students that are tailored to US higher education. So we'll be piloting that over the next year and hopefully be able to roll that out in 2020. And we would love to have some focus groups and your input on the type of information that you need on our diplomas and certificates. So this particular one is a sample certificate of an official record that the student has what their scores are on an exam. And you'll note here they've got the subjects listed, the grades listed. This one's more official because you have the signature of the Vice Chancellor of Cambridge University, and you've got the hologram as well as the serial number. Be aware that these are quite expensive for the student to purchase. At this point, we're also working on creating a more efficient and effective mechanism for delivering records, official transcripts to higher ed institutions. But as of right now, this is about $85 for a high school student. So when they bring this to your institution, they're probably not wanting to leave you with their original copy. And I found that so many of the registrars I have met with over the last 3 years were kind enough to make a photocopy of it and then use our system of double checking to make sure that it is in fact the actual score and that, you know, the security measures are all in place. So currently what's being used is CIE Direct. It is our system to verify students' results online. And here's just a screenshot of how it looks and how you can go in and put in the candidate number, which you would get off of your copy of that exam document. And you can look up the student's information to verify that the grade on the preliminary results and on the official are in fact definitely endorsed by the university. This is how it would look on a student's transcript. So you've got the series, the qualification, the subject, the syllabi options, so forth. And to sign up for this free service, you can either email Cambridge International there, or you can apply online. You can have up to 6 accounts throughout your institution in various departments, whoever needs to have access to this type of a process, you know, to verify. So currently, this is how we're operating. As I said before, we have a project underway in which we're piloting electronic transcripts and developing a system that we need in order to operate more effectively and provide you with the information that you need for multiple students. Because right now you have to go in student by student and look this up. So we're looking at ways to transfer this information electronically to you if your institution needs that, because it has a high volume, so that you can process these students more readily. I'm just saw some of your questions. I am sorry I haven't been able to see all of them as you've asked those, but I am happy to address those at the end, and we're almost there. So our recognition database, when I first started, I said, well, what is a recognition manager and what is a recognition database? So this is a British terminology. It's the terminology that they use to collect statements from universities saying that that the university recognizes our examinations as qualifying a student to be admitted to a university or college in a given country and/or given placement and credit. So this is something else that we have asked them to update, and we're in the process of developing something where a student could actually go in and they search, much like our competitors, by course name and by U.S. institution, college or university, how their credits would be given credit and for what course at that university. So that is a project that's underway over the next 1.5 to 2 years. In the meantime, what we still have is a recognition database where an institution can go in and put the name of, or write their policy. For example, you see here, Abilene Christian University is made a statement that they're recognizing Cambridge International A levels for matriculation purposes, and contact the university for more details. In the American context, students would really like more detailed information about exactly what the A level or AS levels, in the case of most American students, how would that actually help them in college? So another example below that is Adams State University statement that they're willing to offer academic credit or transfer credit for both the A and the AS levels. We still don't have a credit chart there, but there is a link for more information. So as we revamp this over the next 2 years, it should improve dramatically. But if your institution would like to recruit Cambridge International students both domestically and abroad, this would be a great way for you to do that by at least posting your policy online. And here is how to register your college or university's admissions policy online, or credit for prior learning policy. The last thing I'm going to end with here is just a little bit of data on Cambridge student performance in the US. As I said before, the majority of our schools have organically grown in Florida over the last 20 years. So we had the most longitudinal data in Florida. And luckily, Florida State University has analyzed that. They looked at a group of over 8,000 students and compared them to Cambridge students' performance to IB and AP students. And these are their key findings, were that of Cambridge students earned on average a higher GPA than IB students and equivalent GPAs to AP students. What's really important about this is that all advanced placement students earned higher freshman GPAs than students who did not take any type of advanced placement program. And so overall, I think that points out why it's advantageous for you all, for admissions and registrars, to be familiar with the different types of advanced placement programs being offered in the US. There's also, I'm citing some research at the bottom here, that if you'd like to dig into this deeper, feel free to contact me, and I have a lot more in-depth information on this. One of the other additional findings that I think is really important to enrollment managers in the US is that by granting credit for advanced placement coursework, we did not find that it shortened a student's time at the university. They still typically take 4 years of college or university coursework. What they do instead is it gives them the opportunity to take advantage of study abroad, directed individual studies, research, honors, double majors, and it also improves the retention and graduation rates for your college and university. So it's a win-win for the student as well as for the institution. So in a nutshell, here's the qualities of a Cambridge student, and I hope that you recruit more and more of them, both domestically and internationally. And we are planning another webinar at the beginning of March, And I hope to be able to start unpacking an admissions toolkit that we are developing this year that would give some terminology differences between, there's all kinds of little nuances between a qualification is more of a British term for examination. There's little things like that that might be helpful just to have a little fact sheet on that, and some other things we can include in that. So I hope that you will join us next time in March with additional questions. And since I haven't been able to actually view your questions, I thought I would be able to. I would like to now turn it over to the group to ask me any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Adina. I just have to say that this is a truly informative webinar today, so thank you so much for your information. We do have a couple of questions, and to be honest with you, a lot of them are focusing on the grading scale. So if we can go ahead and put our grading scale hat on for a minute and think about the global perspective courses, is that going to be graded differently from the other exams? Is there a standard grading rubric?
That is a great question. So the GPR course, the Global Perspectives and Research course, still has the same grading scale as all the other A and AS levels. So we're still dealing with, the grades go down to an A through an E. But yes, as far as rubrics and documentation on that, they have extensive, the British calls them mark schemes, where we call them rubrics. It's really fun and interesting. But I could possibly, I can unpack that if there's enough interest in that. We have a whole PowerPoint slide just on GPR alone. And it's an interesting one, or I can send out information on it.
Great. Yeah, a lot of us international credential evaluators are always very interested in the grading rubrics and the grading schemes, of course. So we can definitely talk about getting more information out on that to our membership, definitely. So in the same vein, now that we do have the grade equivalency slide up, could you speak to the difference of the lowercase and the uppercase grades that we may see when we're looking at the actual exam results sheets?
Definitely. I thought that was very interesting that the British do use the upper and lowercase. So traditionally, the A level has been around a very long time. I mean, the exam board is over 160 years old. However, the AS level was introduced in the 70s, historically in Great Britain, as a way to measure students' performance. It's predicted performance. So when they introduced the AS level in Great Britain, it was to predict the performance of students on a full A level. And so they saw it as preliminary, and they gave it a lower case score. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. If anybody would like any additional clarification to that point, just go ahead and type it in and let us know. The other question that does have to do with this too is that, Adina, sometimes when I'm looking at the results, the examination result sheets, sometimes I see grades in parentheses. What do those mean?
Very interesting. So, great question. So I flipped over to the sample statement of results, and you'll see here that a student completed the syllabi in chemistry, and the qualification that was earned was an advanced level. So the student has been, the results are an A, capital A level for completing the 2 years and getting the full advanced level, and a small a is for the AS level. It's for the first year of that particular A level. That's where it gets a little confusing. So the advanced subsidiary is the terminology the British use for that first 180 hours of contact.
Okay, excellent. And then, for when we're talking about thinking of A and AS levels for possible transfer credit or advanced standing credit, depending on the exam and institution. Now, do you feel that if the grades are higher, we should be awarding more credit based on the grades and the performance?
That is an excellent question. What we're really asking for is that you treat Cambridge International students on par with AP and IB students. So, for example, if a student scores higher on an AP exam and therefore you're giving them more credit based on that grade, then we would ask you to treat a Cambridge International student who's got a higher score and similarly.
Excellent. Yeah, and I do think that that's a good point. One of the things that we are very keen on at ACRO when we're working with international policy for students is that we really want to make sure that our international policies, especially around transfer of credit, are going to be mirrored directly off of what your domestic policies are. So the question that I would turn back to you at your institution would be, what do you do for domestic students who score higher or lower on the AP examinations, for example? Because it is important to make sure our international policies are mirrored off of our domestic policies as much as possible. Another question that is also interesting, and I think that this is kind of a transnational educational trend, is that we're seeing students at a younger and younger age sitting for these A and AS level examinations. Do you also feel that this is a trend that you're seeing as well?
That's a good question. I think that's part of the local context where I've noticed that in some places like Florida, for example, they will offer an AS level course that is skills based to a freshman or a sophomore to familiarize them with what it's like to take an AS level Cambridge course. So I have found that it's not as strict as, well, we do IGCSE only in the freshman and sophomore years, and then A and AS level in the junior and senior years. So I do think it's a local decision on where they think their students, where they want to start their students. And you'll see that a lot because America is decentralized, both in higher education as well as in K-12. As we grow in the US market, we're realizing that this really comes down to a state curriculum choice on what they want their students to take during which year of high school.
Okay, excellent. And since we still are looking at our sample statement of results, just to clarify the grading once again, and Adina, if you don't mind, maybe I'll summarize this and you can just let me know if I'm on the right track. So for example, for the chemistry course, we have the qualification at the advanced level, and we have the results as a capital A, and then in the parens, we have a lowercase a. And so the lowercase a really is a data point for us to check to make sure that the A is represented accurately. Is that correct?
I think that would be a fair statement. I almost see like the parentheses, the smaller a is a part of the bigger A, because if we go back to how an A level can consist of an AS level embedded within it, then you would sort of have a grade for both levels.
Okay, that's super, super interesting. And then so for the physics course at the AS level, so then the lowercase a in the parentheses does just denote how they did at that level.
Yes, and I think that this is one area where the Cambridge transcripts are confusing, and something that during our process of reinventing the Cambridge transcript for the US market and specifically, I will make sure that that we clarify and simplify would be the better way to put it, because I don't know that we need to have that level of detail for US admissions and registrars. But I will verify that, because that's not something that you would traditionally see in the US context.
Great. So the takeaway for the grading perhaps is that the advanced subsidiary course is really half of the A level, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first 180 hours of the 360 hours.
Okay, great. So really, as long as we're able to clearly understand and determine at what level the examinations were taken, and then that will give us an idea of how best to think about our transfer of credit, whether or not it would be the whole first and second sections of a subject on our campus.
I agree. And like I said, I apologize that we have additional British information on here that's not relevant. And we'll be working to have that, simplified for the US audience. So like the performance uniform marks is definitely a British calculation that they use that's based internally on certain things only relative to Great Britain.
All right, and let's see, do we have more questions from the group that you would like to type in for us? And if you do, we are getting down to the end of our hour today, so this would be the time to go ahead and ask our questions. And of course, Adina will provide her contact information to the group, absolutely. And so if you have direct questions, you can always email Adina or myself at any time, and we will do our best to get back with you with the appropriate information. Yes, we will be able to provide the slide deck, and if you or your colleagues were needed to step out for a moment, or you need to revisit the webinar, we will have this archived on the ACRO webinar website for future reference. A really good question that came in. This has to do with the actual statement of results. So Adina, from what you've noticed here in the United States, do most institutions accept the statement of results as official, or do they hold for the official certificate?
That is an excellent question. Most institutions in the US are willing to take the statement of results as a preliminary document. And if you can, following your college's admissions policies, if you can use this document to make preliminary decisions for a student by also checking in CIE Direct, then that's what I would recommend that you do. And the reason for this is because this comes out immediately after the examination, which in the US is held in May. And you're going to need that information, obviously, for your incoming class in the fall. Whereas the official document, which is the certificate that you see here, does not come out until July. In August, actually more like August. So late July or August. And we know in admissions and as registrars that is way too late to be getting a document that you can make a decision on for that coming fall, because you have students coming in. Part of this has to do, again, with the British system, and we're asking them for some changes. They do this for other parts of the world. So they do not start school, university, until October. So for them, it's not a big issue if they get their certificate in August. But in the US, and for a lot of my colleagues around the world, it is a big issue. You need to have the students' grades, and preferably the students' final grades, way earlier. I mean, preferably no later than June. in order to make any decisions for that student, what they need to take in the fall, and let them get registered for the fall. So I hope that answers your question. And that what I thought that I found with having worked with U.S. registrars is I found them to be very, very understanding of our Cambridge International students only having one official copy, and that it comes really late. And so as a result, they've taken advantage of CIE Direct and going ahead and making some preliminary decisions until the student gets the official one. And I really appreciate that, but that's not my long-term goal. My long-term goal is that we change this process to better serve American colleges and universities.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure that our membership would be very, very grateful if you guys are able to make that change. But until then, ACRO would absolutely agree that using the preliminary result as a basis for conditional admission is absolutely fine. And then when they arrive on campus, just making sure that we have all of their official documentation in the way that goes along with your institutional policies, absolutely. Well, we are pretty much at the end of our hour today. I would just like to thank Dr. Adina Chapman for spending an hour with us today, letting us know about the trends that we're seeing here with the U.S. domestic student market and taking the international Cambridge examinations. Just a couple of things. Again, we will have the webinar archived for your reviewing pleasure. And we will also make the PowerPoint available to you as well. In addition, just a couple of other upcoming ACRO events that we have. We are having our Strategic Enrollment Management conference at the beginning of November this year for Sunday, November 11th through November 6th. We also have our Winter Institute for International Transfer Credit here in Washington, D.C. from February 3rd through February 7th. And we also have our upcoming ACRO annual meeting, this year held in New Orleans, and we would love for all of you to join us, and that's going to be from April 5th to the 8th. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you on future ACRO webinars. Have a wonderful afternoon, and please always feel free to reach out to us at ACRO or to Adina at Cambridge for further questions. Thank you guys so much.